It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. Yeah, I am looking forward to talking with my guest today. Joining me is Kevin ONell, CEO of PeopleLinks, which is an app that activates social selling to drive more quality leads, make faster sales cycles, and increase conversion rates. So, Kevin, welcome to Accelerate.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, take a minute, introduce yourself to the audience. Maybe tell us how you got started in sales.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. Hi, audience. I'm Kevin ONell. I lead PeopleLinks. I got started in sales as an entrepreneur. One of the first quotes I heard, and as I was in a product role, that I didn't like was that nothing happens until someone sells something.
Isn't that true?
More true than I knew 15 years ago, and more true every day. But I took that quote to heart, and as I've been an entrepreneur over the past 15 or 20 years at various companies, I've always looked to how you address the customer's needs. And while I've been in different roles from product to operations to sales, at the end of the day, especially in a startup company, we're all in sales.
All in sales. So I always advise CEOs when I'm working with them, I work with a number of CEOs for startups, is that they really need to get out and make that first sale themselves. I mean, until they really understand how the product is sold and why people are buying, it's really not worth wasting their time trying to hire salespeople.
I would completely agree. I would say in early stage companies, there is nothing you can do better than putting yourself in the front of your customers, and probably true throughout any products at any stage of the life cycle, but especially early on. When you're selling a product that hasn't existed and you're selling in a process where it's not an RFP process, it's very, very important to understand the pain that your customer's feeling, understand how to address that nerve, and then help make them successful.
Yeah, understand what the process is required to help them move from that point of interest to making a decision, what they need from you in order to be able to do that.
That's correct.
Very interesting. Okay, so what was the impetus then for starting PeopleLinks?
So PeopleLinks was founded by two guys that were in the first 100 employees at LinkedIn. They left the company in 2009, left LinkedIn in 2009 and started the company as they saw a real need for people to be able to use LinkedIn and other social networks in the sales process and not just in the recruiting process.
So hopefully they're happy about the Microsoft acquisition of LinkedIn.
I think the Microsoft acquisition is really exciting for the industry. I think, as recently as probably 24 months ago in many sales calls, I was still answering the question that, are you sure these Twitter machines and LinkedIn networks are going to stay around?
Really?
I think the Microsoft acquisition validates the industry and really validates the channel, that the way that people will interact in the future, a lot of it will come through social networks, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and probably networks we don't even know about yet. So
I didn't mean to interrupt. So if you go back and tell us about PeopleLinks and then maybe answer the question, do you think that besides sort of validating this idea of networks, is this acquisition of Microsoft, is it going to make your life easier as somebody that works within this LinkedIn ecosystem?
So I believe that the acquisition helps validate it for large corporations, validates that LinkedIn is part of the process and will be used to collaborate not just for recruiting or across your own network, but really in all parts of the organization. And so I think it makes it easier. It definitely in the past 4 weeks has spurred interest, not only in us, but in the industry as a whole, which I think is a good thing.
All right. So PeopleLinks, again, let's get back to that. So
Sure.
What specifically does it do?
So PeopleLinks is a software platform that helps you integrate social selling into your existing sales process. So today you have 4 channels to talk to your customers. You can talk to your customers through the web. You can talk to your customers through the phone. You can talk to your customers through email, or you can talk to your customers through social networks. And in each of those, in most cases, companies have tools. So through the web, they have marketing automation tools and other tools for their marketing teams to use. Through phone, they have tools that are dialers, and email, they have tools that help manage email flow. But most companies still have not rolled out tools to help their sales team use social as part of the cadence that helps them engage with customers.
Why?
I think it's a new channel. I remember earlier in my career a debate that I had one time about how were executives ever going to use email. And as we look around now, actually, the debate was really about not just email, but it was whether executives were ever going to use email and whether regular employees were ever going to use cell phones and laptops. And I think the key to both of those technologies being adopted, not just by executives or by employees, is that they really make us more efficient. And so if you think about efficiency and you think about what salespeople want to achieve, is they want to be able to reach more people more often and interact with them in an efficient manner. And so while we initially thought of social as an efficient manner for interacting about our grandchildren or our children or our old classmates, social has become a way to more efficiently interact with everyone in our lives, and that includes our professional contacts.
So let's look at the other half of the equation. I mean, we talk about efficiency being doing the right thing and effectiveness doing the right thing right. Does it also help effectiveness?
So I think it helps effectiveness when done correctly. And I think this is a really important point to think about is there are tools out there that help salespeople automate. And when we talk to our customers and when we work about how we're going to engage with our customers here, even as our internal sales team, we talk a lot about the risks of automation and that sales still needs and sales probably will always need to be a level of personal interaction. And that social networks, when done correctly, can be a place to help people understand, help people introduce each other to each other, help people understand and become credible with each other, and then people engage through that channel in an efficient manner. At the end of the day, though, probably very few sales, if any, are going to be closed to a social network. So right. A social network is a channel that helps us grow relationships more quickly and helps us engage in those relationships, but it can't be the only channel through which we use, especially in a sales process.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if we use the expression, people buy from those they know, like, and trust, it really addresses some of the know-like aspect of that equation.
Correct. I mean, think about how we used to interact before LinkedIn and before social networks. I mean, if I wanted to find out who you were connected to, Andy, I'd have to call you. I'd have to get on your calendar. I'd have to ask about a few people. You might have some ideas for me. Today, I can go on to LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, and I can see the types of people that you're engaging with and ask for that introduction and gain background and knowledge. So clearly, the know part is the first part, which is the knowledge. The like part you brought up, I think, lends into the credibility. You use the word trust next, but surely based on seeing who else you've interacted with, which types of things you've published, all of a sudden I have much more credibility at a very early stage in my relationship. And then surely I have to now use that channel respectfully and no differently than I would use the channel of having your desk phone or your cell phone number. I need to use that channel in a way that helps me build a relationship rather than eroding it.
Yeah, it's really an interesting point. I love the sort of the analogy or the metaphor. Is it an analogy or a metaphor used about the personal number at their desk, whether it's cell phone or their desk phone. I don't think too many salespeople sort of analogize it that way to say, yeah, okay, I got to be really cautious. I just can't pick up the phone and call somebody at random. Yet I haven't earned that right. Yet you'd see that they would tend to sort of still keep sending them emails or engaging outreach on social.
Yeah, I think that is a very, it's a very important skill to be taught. And I think it's a difficult one to learn in today's channels, whereas a lot of your channels, the human interaction doesn't happen immediately, but the annoyance might. And especially as we have remote sales teams, one of the things we talk about a lot in our platform and one of the things our platform does in teaching best practices is it's really hard to learn what's right when you can't have the conversations around the water cooler. So I'm not watching my peers because salespeople work remotely or they work independently. But I do need to find a way to get to the cadence that helps people and makes people want to engage with me versus having to engage with me.
Right. Well, you recently wrote something that I thought was really interesting. And I'm just going to quote here. You said, sales enablement technologies are built to guide, coach, and create process not to provide a quick fix for a real business challenge. And I think a lot of sales leaders would be disappointed to hear that.
I hope they're not disappointed, but I understand your point.
I see that so often, right? There's this shiny object syndrome that people get, right? As the latest technology that's come out, this thing's really cool, and undoubtedly it may be cool, but you're just not ready for it.
This quote is not mine, and I can't remember exactly who to give recognition to, but surely, the saying that a fool with a tool is still a fool applies here. And we often talk to sales leaders, and we'll ask them how many tools their team is using, and they will typically say 4 to 5. It usually starts with a CRM. There's a dialer tool, there's an email tool, maybe 1 or 2 other tools around social or something else.
List building or something, right?
List building.
Yeah, Discover.
But then when you sit down with their sales teams and you ask them to write them all down, they are typically using 9 to 11 tools across their organization. And
so 5 that are sanctioned and 6 that the reps have come up with themselves.
That's exactly right. And at that point, when you ask the question, and how well are they using the tools, or even to say to the people, like, how well are you using those tools? The light goes off that they're probably not using them well. And so when we talk about guiding, coaching, and then creating processes, you have to guide people. And guiding is really no different than what you probably would have done in a daily stand-up or through typical training. But we all know in typical training processes, maybe 10%, 25% of the people apply those things, right? Everyone leaves the room. They're all excited. Like, gosh, I just learned the best thing. I just learned the challenger sale. I just learned how to use XYZ tool. But you go back to your desk and you forget what you were supposed to do, and you get busy and you don't apply it. So the greatest piece that I see happening in the sales industry today is not that the tools are available and not that the data is available and not that I can't touch my customer or my prospects through more channels, but watching it all come together. And that's when sales organizations, I think, can really transform themselves. So if they can guide and coach in a more efficient manner, in a manner that reinforces best practices, if they can apply tools and get the adoption of those tools across their organizations, and they can truly revolutionize their sales teams from what they could do even as recently as 5 or 10 years ago.
Well, let's talk about the first issue that you raised, which was interesting, is that, okay, you survey management and they say, gosh, we've got 5 apps in our sales stack. And then you talk to the reps themselves and they say we've got 11. So let's start with that issue is how do you as a sales leader begin to get a handle on that? Because clearly what the message from the reps are, or the messages from the reps are, either we don't like what you did, it's not effective in some regard, or it's not capable enough for what we really need these days.
Mm-hmm. So, I think like all good leadership, it starts with listening, and no different than we would listen to our customers, we have to listen to our teams. So our teams have adopted these technologies because they believe they make them more successful. And so, even where maybe organizations, if they have size or they have regulatory means, have put constraints on sales reps, the reps have found a way to drive that productivity. And the productivity might be through better lists. The productivity might be through better outreach. The productivity might be through tracking follow-up. Different people in different sales roles and different types of organizations have found different ways to apply this. But surely by listening to them, we can then start to look at what makes the biggest difference for our organization. And so it's not as much about maybe standardizing for 100% of the organization, but it is probably about standardizing for that 60 to 80% of the organization, where if we even get to this baseline, we can make everyone in our organization that much more productive and that much more successful.
And one of the issues I think that maybe contributes to this increase from 6 or 5 to 11, this increase of 6 apps that are being used that are self-sourced by the reps, is a desire to not necessarily, participate with all of their data in the CRM system and the sanctioned tools.
I think that's true, and surely I hear that, and I've heard it across many regulated industries. I think that's in industries where people really are fighting for every sale. I think that is very true. But I also think some of that comes from that the tools that we have given to salespeople traditionally have been for the benefit of the management and of the leadership, and not for the benefit of the sales rep.
Exactly.
And so the evolution of the newer tools on the market are really much more about how do you take the data in the process, right? So I have data in my process. I can turn that data into information. I can hopefully take that information, turn it into a best practice, which I like to talk about as knowledge. And then if I can really get people to embrace the whole piece, then that knowledge becomes wisdom. And that's where sales tools were typically built for management to have wisdom. They weren't built for salespeople to have wisdom. And so as tools can start to look at data, break that data down, and make the rep more effective, I think they are far more likely to participate and make that information be available to everyone in the organization than to hoard that information for themselves.
It also seems like a disproportionate amount of the tools that we see coming in the sales automation space really seem to be geared toward top of the funnel. Mm-hmm. So sales development, prospecting, proactive outreach, through various channels. What do you see happening in the middle of the funnel? So once maybe the opportunity migrates from a inside sales team to an AE, or maybe if it's a field sales force with some inside people doing lead sourcing that gets into the hands of the sales rep. How does PeopleLinx support that sort of middle of the funnel sales effort?
Right. So we talk about the fact that in the middle of the funnel is where sales go to die. I think we all sort of have this problem, right? We know exactly what the metrics are that need to be hit every month for the top of the funnel for contacts and new leads. We surely know every single deal coming out of the end of the funnel because we're working towards a monthly number, and we talk about all the deals and whether they're going to close in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I think that's pretty standard culture for most sales organizations. The key is how do you engage at that middle of the funnel, and how do you not forget about it? And we see that as a really, really important piece. And whether it's the PeopleLinx tool or other tools that are out there in the marketplaces, how do you engage with that buyer in the middle of the funnel? And probably more importantly is how do you engage with all of the buyers, right? So we all know that we are selling to 5.6 people or whatever the number in your industry that CEB is made famous.
Well, that number, there's a wide range of numbers in that, depending on who you speak to.
That's exactly right. But I know we all know most of the time it's not just one any longer. It might be
exactly
2, and it might be 10, but it's probably somewhere in between. But how do I engage with those people throughout, and how do I engage them in a way that I create value for that person? And not just become an annoyance on their phone or in their email. And so we read that data with our tool. We prompt the behavior that organizations have deemed as the best practice for that part of the funnel. And that's a really, really important part of how we engage. I think the other part is that there's this whole piece of the funnel that exists in organizations for the land and expand. And so in many software companies, right, we're getting the initial trial, we're getting the free pilot, or we're even having a client that says we're going to roll out, but we're only going to roll out maybe 5 or 10% of what the potential is within the organization.
Right. Certainly in the SaaS space, right? We see that as fairly common.
Very, very, very true in SaaS. And so when you think about that model of the sales organization, and some people have deemed that the flywheel model, the land and expand piece is critical to how we then not only grow our business, but how we make our customers successful. Because the more that we can interact with them at a regular cadence that helps them roll out the next part of their organization, the next part of their organization, the next part of the organization, we are going to become a critical piece. And so that does take a cadence. It may be our cadence or it may be our customer's cadence, but it surely takes one that's repeatable and definable.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also say you have a 5-step program to help a company ensure they're getting the right ROI on the tools, the sales tools they invest in. Maybe we can go through that quickly so people sort of understand. Because I think it's a great thing that there's not this sort of set and forget thing about, we bought this application, go learn it. And so you first talk about, you have to sort of keep it in front of people and keep talking about it, like in your internal newsletter or your communications you have to your sales team.
We do. And so I think it's a really important part. And I think this gets back to, salespeople will use tools on their own. And we actually call that random acts. But I think it's important to let salespeople pick the tools and really test what is going to work in your organization. So the first step of our 5 steps is, hey, what are the random acts that are working? What are the anecdotal stories that you're hearing that are lifting salespeople and making them more productive and more successful? The second piece is, once you know that, then how do you assess those tools and come up with guidelines for people to use them, and create the discussion.
And is this something that sometimes I see in companies that too often it's sort of imposed from the top as opposed to really listening to the sales reps in terms of, because everybody has this desire to be scripted and have a fairly well-defined process, but reps are going to use tools differently based on their own individual strengths. So how do you sort of make the best practices out of that?
Right. I think that's where you want to listen to them. You want to make best practices, but you want to leave guide or leeway for them to be able to adopt them to the process that works best for them. I think where we see organizations struggle is where they either make that policy or the tools too rigid, or they simply don't train or even allow for the anecdotal stories so that reps can learn from each other. So as reps are spread out around the country or around the globe, is how do I take those random acts? How do I let people know about them? How do I help get adoption higher, help people train on that tool, train on the process that's going to be successful, and then really integrate to the existing sales process? I think the hardest part is really, our 5-step is the last piece is integration and optimization is really step 4 and 5, which is once I've started to identify the tools, once I've created the culture where people feel like they can use the tools and I'm training on them, how do I integrate them back into the sales process that I already have, which is the last thing that I want is someone having to do something inside my CRM and then do something else inside another tool and then something else inside another tool. And then all of a sudden I have 4 or 5 different interfaces, none of which are being used optimally.
Well, and I think one of the real key problems in this environment is that too many companies don't have a well-defined sales process, so they start layering tools on top of a hastily constructed sales process or one that's not well documented or proven. Right,
and we see that a lot, especially in organizations that are kind of up or out sales organizations where everyone adopts their own methodology, they're successful or not. In today's day and age, we can really use the data, the tools, and some level of process to help people be that much more successful, that much more quickly.
So you called it an up or out?
I did call it an up or out. I mean, I think that is, there's certain industries where that has been the norm. Let's just take like commercial real estate, for an example. We work with a number of commercial real estate, and there's some part of that industry where you come in and you get your own book of business and you grow it yourself and you're accountable to yourself. But surely there are best practices to be adopted across that business and tools that can support that business and data that can be unlocked to make everyone in that organization more successful more quickly. And these are all tools and data sources that didn't exist as recently as a few years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, so many of them are mobile based that, again, that really, I think, complicates the task or the challenge for, let's say, a sales leader that wants to have some sort of uniformity in the sales process, but yeah, you've got very easy, if not free, access to a number of tools that in many cases, could be very beneficial tools for the sales rep in terms of helping them. In fact, I see more and more being introduced all the time, the sort of personal productivity for sales reps that don't interface with the CRM system, for instance.
Right, and they're separate from the CRM. I think that's difficult. We really preach that your CRM is the base of all the tools you're going to introduce into your organization, and that's really true in most, if not all, of our clients. Is that the CRM is the foundation for what they've created. Surely there are tools that can sit on top of CRMs. There are tools that can make the reps more productive. But at the end of the day, the CRM is the foundation for what they're doing as an organization.
Well, the reason I brought that up is they don't interact. Deliberately so, right? I mean, so I think we've reached a little bit of a tipping point with some of the sales technologies, at least for not necessarily the sales development top of the funnel, but for the middle of the funnel, for the reps, the account execs, and so on, the field reps, no one wants to see the sausage being made, or they don't want to show people the sausage being made, what steps are actually going through. And you sort of sense that given there's more of these tools being made available, is they're going to start gravitating towards some of those. And it's going to present a real challenge, I think, for sales leaders.
I agree. It is a real challenge for sales leaders. It's a real challenge, but of course, like any change, it's a real opportunity, because I think the productivity being driven from these tools is exactly why reps are searching them out and why they're utilizing them. So if
they get the productivity they want out of them, if they become more effective, then they could sort of say, well, see, I did that without without having every step recorded in Salesforce.com. Do I really need to do it? Did I just make my case, or did they actually make the case the other way?
Yeah, there's probably an argument on both sides, but I would say that if you can take the best practices and apply them, more often than not, the numbers are going to hold true. That the people that follow it are going to be the most successful.
Yeah, very interesting. Kevin, this last segment of the show, I've got some standard questions I ask all my guests, and if you're ready, we'll jump into them.
Sure, Andy. Thanks.
Okay, so the first one is a hypothetical scenario I posed to all the guests. You've just been hired, you, Kevin, have just been hired as a new VP of sales at a company whose sales have stalled out, and the board, CEO is anxious for you to come in and get things turned around quickly. So, Rome wasn't built in a day, but what two things could you do the first week on the job that could have sort of the biggest impact to start things going in the right direction?
Yeah, I love the question, Andy. It's setting those initial foundation when you come into any new role in an organization, especially on the sales side, is so critical. The first and foremost, the thing that comes to mind is listening, for two reasons. One is that you want to listen to the people that are in the organization and what they see in the field, what they are hearing in the marketplace, and what they know. But the second thing is that I think it's a really important part of the culture, and that you want to encourage your people not only for you that you're willing to listen to them, but that they should be listening to their clients. And that gets me to the second one, which is that what's the problem that we're solving for our customers? How are we making them win? I often ask organizations, are we trying to make this, does this person want to be famous or rich or both? And how are we going to help them do that? And I think framing up that question and then really listening to our customers has driven the success of the sales teams that I've seen in my career.
So knowing what the customer wants to achieve.
It's such a cliche because we talk about it all the time, but reflecting on it and actually achieving it it takes so much more work than just a couple sentences. Yeah,
it's not like it's embedded in our DNA, right? It's something we always have to be conscious and thinking about.
That's right.
Yeah, it's so. Okay, great answer. So now I've got some rapid fire questions, and the first one is: when you, Kevin, are out selling your services at PeopleLinx, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
At the end of the day, it's yourself. You are always selling yourself. And I think when I've been in small companies and large companies, and surely in large companies, you have the benefit of the brand and the knowledge and of what that brand is known for. But surely in small companies, you are the brand. And I think more and more so today, your sales team is on the stage of your brand. In the past, maybe the brand was our umbrella and we all sort of stood behind that brand. But today, all of your people have a face. And so they have a face on their LinkedIn page. They have a face on their digitally. They have a mobile device. They're in touch with clients both in their personal and professional life. So, being who you are and being passionate about your business and making your client successful is all a piece of how that client perceives you. And it's what drives your success.
Yeah, no, I agree. Salespeople, first line of differentiation, more than the product, it's your salespeople or yourself if you're out selling. And to your point, yeah, hopefully all your people everybody that's listening, if you have sales teams, everybody needs to have a profile picture on their LinkedIn profile. I'm still surprised at how many requests I get to connect from people that have no picture.
Will help them.
Yeah, you can help them with that. So who's your sales role model?
So I really had the benefit of working for a guy named Matt Gillen, who's a local entrepreneur here in Philadelphia. And in my experience, Matt is the best at the enterprise sale. He has led numerous B2B sales companies, and he really knows the art of the B2B sale and how to sell to large organizations. And so he's been my role model in there over the last 15 years and continues to be.
Was there one particular thing you learned from him that you could share?
So Matt is very, very good at listening. He's very, very good at going into C-level people, understanding their pain, and then learning from the industry and coming back around to solve that pain. So one of the most important things I've learned from Matt is how you can go through an industry and talk to, say, the top 4 or 5 leaders in that industry, understand the pain that industry is facing, go back, be a great entrepreneur, spend a lot of time on the whiteboard, brainstorm what that solution could be, and then go back and get in front of the people and really create value for them. I mean, in many regards, Matt is a consultant for them for free prior to making any sale.
Right. All right, next question is, what's one book that every salesperson should read?
So I'm biased towards Crossing the Chasm. I really think that Crossing the Chasm does an incredible job of displaying how people adopt new technologies. But I think specifically for the salesperson, surely Crossing the Chasm was written mostly for product people, but Crossing the Chasm for salespeople, understanding where your product lies in that life cycle and who your buyer is really critical. When you are selling an early product to a strategy leader or a transformation leader, much different sales process than when you're selling your product to an established market and an executor in that marketplace. I think helping salespeople understand where their product lies on that is just as important as helping them understand many of the other things that we teach across the sales skills.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's an interesting point about that is you and I could spend time talking about this after the show, but an interesting question to raise, because I agree. Crossing the Chasm, great book. But my belief is, my contention is, and this is primarily from a tech standpoint, is, because I've seen it, is that as you get further into the life cycle of the product and you're selling to new customers, that actually they are almost more difficult to sell than any others, because the fact they haven't adopted means that perhaps they're less sophisticated, less nuanced in understanding, less whatever, right? And it actually becomes a more of a sale about you're still selling innovation at that point. Yeah, and you really have to be very mindful of that. I think people tend to sort of say, yeah, we're later in the life cycle, everybody should understand this product. And they lose the fact they really almost have to listen more carefully to these people, because if they had found it easy to make that decision, they would have done it earlier.
Right. It's a great point and so relevant to the space that I'm in and you're in today, which is how our sales technology is being applied, where there are organizations that have their stack of sales tools built out and they know exactly how they integrate and they've made investments in process and procedure. And there are other organizations who haven't gotten there at all yet, but that doesn't mean that they won't get there. But I do agree that it's a tough sale. Yeah,
you're selling innovation at that point. Okay. So last question for you. What music's on your playlist these days?
So I'm biased towards Coldplay. I might be stuck, maybe dating myself, but Coldplay, Jack Johnson, some of that. I probably have way too much kids music on mine. I just got back from my family vacation, so I have a lot of kids music.
What are the kids listening to these days? Besides Taylor Swift.
Yeah, they like Taylor Swift. They definitely like Taylor Swift. They like a lot of kids music that I can't put the name on the artist right now, but it's good.
All right, yeah, you got to pay attention to the names. At some point we'll come back and we'll talk again, and we'll expect some contemporary names from you.
That's right. Thanks.
All right. Well, Kevin, thanks for joining me. Tell folks how they can find out more about PeopleLinx.
Sure. We'd always love to have people come to our website and learn about PeopleLinx. If they're adopting a social selling program at all, we would welcome the chance for them to come talk to us. And we do a webinar once a week that teaches social selling skills, as well as reinforces many of the tools that you would use to make your team successful.
All right, so that's PeopleLinx, PeopleLinx, it's just so people understand, .com, right?
That's correct.
All right, PeopleLinx.com. Well, again, Kevin, thanks for being on the show.
Great.
And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And one easy way to do that is to subscribe to this podcast. To accelerate, take a few minutes, go to iTunes, subscribe. Then you'll make sure you won't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Kevin ONell, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.